GDPR can potentially open up some new risks for you.
So Bindu, a lot of folks are talking about GDPR in the last couple of weeks, but it sounds like you've got an interesting spin on it, that there's sorts of pros and cons of it, that it opens up a new technology market. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So, GDPR, the compliance deadline is looming. It's about, in a week from now, so May 25th is when the deadline is approaching.
So there's a new set of regulations called GDPR, and it's going to require a lot of companies to go and maybe introduce new protections in their environment, possibly procure new equipment.
And we've seen that in the privacy technology space, it opens up a whole new market of being able to address this operational problem of managing and maintaining GDPR compliance. And we see that these privacy tools that are out there that help customers manage, and operationalize their governance management practices, it could open up a whole set of risks. So like we always suggest to our customers, take a risk-based approach when you're making a technology purchase decision.
So when you say a risk-based approach, I guess my first question would be, what are the risks that you would see of somebody trying to abide by the GDPR? What risks does it actually bring into the environment?
The risk of a new tool being introduced into a customer's environment would mean that, this tool, think about what this tool is going to change that business process and how it's going to change that existing, infrastructure to be able to see, okay, does this, tool have access to other information within that environment? Who controls that information? So, compliance is definitely, point-in-time effort. So any new introduction in terms of changes to the infrastructure can put you out of compliance. So while you're investing in these tools, it is important to make sure that you take an angle of really investigating how this tool fits into your current deployment.
You can put in some software, you can bring in a new process, but if you don't fully understand what you're doing, it's totally possible to put yourself in more hot water than you had been before.
I think what Bindu is saying is, right on in terms of understanding the types of tools that you're now going to deploy, understanding that these new regulations are going to really now start putting a spotlight on the types of data that tool is collecting. Not that those things weren't being considered before, but now there's these heftier regulations that have some pretty hefty fines, I think, associated with with breaking some of these regulations.
The key is also because there's so much focus on privacy and there's so much focus on information being collected, while organizations are looking to simplify their compliance, they may end up making technology decisions that instead of helping their compliance effort may harm it, right? So you want to make sure that while you are taking a look at privacy tools out there, do that with just like with any other security technology. When you are going to make that buying decision, you are going to take a view into how that affects your risk profile.
All right, so it sounds like what you would recommend for anybody getting into the GDPR space, which sounds like most people will have to, is that they have to have a better understanding of their own existing processes before they try and make any modifications in order to meet the GDPR requirements. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it is.
To me, it's very important. Anytime you bring in any tool, you have to do the same type of assessment. Whenever a new regulation arises or you bring in a new tool, because if you don't go through the proper checks, what can happen is you expose yourself to vulnerabilities with that tool. You don't have that tool properly configured, and you might actually think you're in compliance. But because it's not properly configured, it's not properly set up, you're actually out of compliance, which might cause you some of these fines or penalties in the future.
So GDPR compliance requires a deep understanding of the underlying business process as to how do you collect data, how do you process it, how do you store it. So definitely get the help of a technical expert that can help you understand the technology decisions that you will have to make to support your GDPR compliance.